love you back. He said, but if you're going to hold on to my promises, you got to love those who don't love you. You got to love those who have ridiculed your name, who have slandered you, who talked about you, who put you aside and told you you weren't going to never be nobody. He said, because there's some people, some of our family members, some of our loved ones. He said, well, we call ourselves believers. He said, but we sit up here, can't stand the folk. Talking about, but I'm waiting on God to do this for me. God ain't finna do nothing. He ain't gonna do nothing until you love. What am I saying? What is this love? This love is that, you know what, I'm gonna pray for them. He said that will really show you your love walk, because if you can pray for your enemies, you love them. If you ain't got nothing to say, I just can't think about it. You're not operating in love. He said, because if your enemy is hungry, you ought to feed them. If they thirsty, you ought to give them something to drink. He said, but we don't have the mindset of to retaliate. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. You talk about me, I'm going to talk bad about you. And God said, no. The first thing that we got to do, if we're going to hold on to the promise, you first got to have a desire, and you got to operate in love for others. What did John 3:16 say? So for God so loved the world that he gave his only and begotten son. It says here, because in verse 12 say, then you would not become spiritually dull. See, if some of us are dull, it's because we don't love. And indifferent. Instead, you will follow the example of those who are going to inherit it, God's promise, because of their faith and endurance. Verse 13 say, for example, there was God's promise to Abraham. Since there was no greater one to swear by, God took an oath in his own name, saying, I will certainly bless you, and I will multiply your descendants beyond number. And verse 15 say, and Abraham endured. Let me pull it out in the King James Version. Because when you look in the King James Version, it said that Abraham endured. We talking about the promise. We still talking about the promise. Because when you're looking at the promise, it says here in verse 13, he said, for when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could not swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you. And so after he had patiently endured. I want you to underline that. He patiently endured. When I looked up that word patiently endured in the Greek, it means long suffering. Patience. It means you endure when you're angry. You endure when there's wrath. You tolerate the suffering. See, because when you're waiting on God to fulfill a promise, you got to understand you got to pay a price for that promise. All right. You got to go through some ridicule. You got to go through being uncomfortable. You got to go being talked about. You got to go against some opposition. You got to go against a lot of things because you're holding on to what God has promised you.
Yes, yes. That's it.
See, we want to go through the promise and thinking we don't have to go through nothing. We're going to go through something. If you're going to get it from God, you're going to go through something because he want to know, do you really believe him? He said, because I'm looking for a people that will hold on. So in other words, if God promised me that my child is going to be delivered and set free, so when I look at my child, look like they doing everything but what God said, then I got to sit there and look at my child and say, but I'm holding on to what God said. And then when I go on the job, it's like people coming up against me, there are people talking about my children, I got to hold on to what God has promised me, that even when I look at my marriage, my people, the family members say, you need to give up, you need to let them go on by their business. I got to hold on to what God has promised me about my side, my child, about my situation. I got to hold on. Yes. Because see, God showed me, what does this holding on entails? It entails me still reading my Bible. Just because I'm going through don't mean I can't read. I got to stop reading my Bible. It does not mean that I can't help nobody. God says some of you have stopped helping people because you going through. He said you all made yourself an idol because you concerned about yourself and you forgot about the promise. You forgot because you got to understand. He said I created you to bring me glory. But you bringing your own self glory when you stuck like Chuck on what you dealing with. He said, because if I created you for me, but you turn around using what you dealing with, that's your source. That's all you talk about. That's all you think about, what you dealing with. He said, but I got you. Well, I got some people who I need you to help, but you can't even help them because you can't even leave your mind. You can't let go of what you dealing with because you still caught up in your situation and you won't pick up his situation. Because see, it says here, Abraham, when God made the promise to Abraham, do you not know it took Abraham 25 years to get the promise? 25 years. But it said it was accredited to Abraham because he believed God. Even when his wife said, man, me and you both old, paraphrasing, me and you both old, let's go ahead and you sleep with the concubine and she'll have a baby. Come on. Well, we get in and we try to do it ourselves because we don't see no way possible how it's going to work out. But it said Abraham endured, but he continued to hold on to the promise. I need y'all to get this now. Because you got to look at your situation don't match up with what God said. He told